I'm ready.
All right. Hey everybody, welcome to one more round. Today I'm doing a solo episode and we're gonna have a lot of fun. I've been asked a bunch of different questions by people that I know that I've helped with Arrive Financial, whether it be retirement planning, life insurance, getting things together for their kids and investment. So I'm gonna answer some common questions. But before I get into that, number one, I'd just like to ask you guys, if you get some value out of this, please share it with a friend. You know, there's going to be a bunch of clips and stuff. You know, I appreciate if you share that. But I know that there's a lot of people that want different opinions on this information, and I think I can add some value to them based on what they're looking for. And I always recommend and suggest too that they look at other different sources. So, with that, I will say today is Friday, November 8th, I believe, and we just had an election, so that was quite the polarizing time. I know that if any of you guys are listening to this that have lived through, I mean, most of you guys lived in America, you saw all the negative ads, you saw all of the division, all of the things that were said to try to cause you to go one way or another in your thought process, and now we have a result. And you know what? Our president is going to be Donald Trump again, and we've had 4 years with him before, and now we're going to have 4 more years with him. And I will say that although I am a conservative of belief in most of my things, and you don't have to agree with that, and that's totally fine if you don't. What I would say though is be open to having conversations with people in general, and myself included, that see things different. That's what makes our country so amazing, is that you can have conversations with people that have a differing opinion, and sometimes through conversation and discourse, you can actually adjust your mindset maybe 10, 20% to see a different point of view. That's what America's been all about. It was never about this is exactly how things are done, and this is how we're always going to do it because that's just the way it is. No, it's about having conversations. And if you look at the past 250 years of us as a country, we have made adjustments and we've become better. And that's through conversations and discourse. So if you've got that relative, you've got that friend that you're not talking to because they're liberal or they're conservative and all that, what I'm going to say to you simply is see if you can actually sit down, have a cup of coffee, have a conversation, and see from their viewpoint without getting angry. I will say, I grew up in a household that definitely was more liberal in general, and specifically my stepmom. And I love her. She raised me. But when it came to discussing politics, certainly when I became a little more conservative in my beliefs when I was 19, we couldn't actually have a conversation that didn't end up in yelling. And I hate to even say that, but the reality is that she didn't want to hear anything I had to say. She thought I was an idiot. And I didn't want to hear anything that she wanted to say. And I sadly have to say that. But it would have been nice if we could have just sat down and had conversations so I could see from her standpoint why she believed so deeply in that. Because she was a very complex person and had a great sense of humor. And honestly, she was very smart. So I would have loved to have had those conversations, and I don't get to anymore. She passed away a little over 10 years ago, and I regret that. So I'm saying this to you because you never know. Life is short. Make sure that you don't let things that you disagree on get rid of friendships that can be there. So, with that, I will get off my soapbox, but I will also say the next 4 years, I'm going to guess, are going to be pretty prosperous for the United States of America if you choose it to be. You can have the most fertile soil in the world, but if you don't choose to plant your garden, nothing will ever grow. So make sure that you do your best to plant seeds in a very fertile garden when it comes to your finances and your family over the next several years. So with that, I've got Hank with me, and we're going to be going through 10 questions. I had to sort through a bunch of emails and think back on questions I've had from different customers and friends, and we're going to go through those. I'm going to answer, and hopefully you get some value out of my answers. And if you disagree with me, that's totally cool. I'd love actually to hear from you. And again, have a conversation because there's always opportunity to learn on both sides. So With that, Hank, what's our first question?
Well, Josh, our first question here is, how are the Cardinals going to do?
Okay, so the Cardinal thing, I put on my Instagram yesterday. I am doing a podcast on financial investments, debt, growing income, and I said, I'd love a question, and I get a question about the Cardinals. So obviously they were joking, but I do think it's important that we have to address this. We are leading the division for the first time in a long time. Super Bowl bound, that's what I believe. No, I think Kyler Murray is having one of the best years. He's really stepped up and become a leader. I think last year being hurt most of the year really did something to him, and he realized that he was going to be a better leader coming out of it, and he has been this year. I think our defense has played fantastic, and we became a fourth quarter team. The Arizona Cardinals are a fourth quarter team. They were the worst fourth quarter team in the National Football League last year. Terrible. Man, if they had a lead by 21, that wasn't safe going into the fourth quarter. But now they can be down by 14, and they still have a chance going into the fourth quarter. And in the NFL, one of the things you need to win is you need to be a fourth quarter team. You need to have grit and to be able to overcome circumstances. So with that being said, I think they actually fare a good chance of winning the division. 49ers are not playing up to their caliber, although they're missing Christian McCaffrey, okay? Let's just be honest. That's the best player in football, well-rounded, and there's a lot of arguments that can be made, but let's just face it. That guy can catch, he can run. He had more touchdowns than anybody last season. Fantastic. But he's been hurt. So their number one weapon's out. The Seahawks, they know how to win, and I always call them the luckiest team in football. But I have to maybe give that to the Rams. The Rams are really coming on, and they've caught some breaks. So Cardinals are going to win our division. That's my belief. I also think that we are going to go deep in the playoffs as we continue to be healthy. And, we'll see. We'll come back to this in 4 months and see if I was right or if I was an absolute idiot. So anyway, that question's answered.
Now for the real ones. I've been putting money into my 401k for years, but is that enough to retire comfortably? Should I be doing something else too?
That's a great and a very common question. So a 401k is something that if you have an employer that you can contribute to and that they can match. One of my recommendations to everybody who has the opportunity to contribute to a 401k is if you can, max it out. This is going to do a couple things. Number one, you're going to get that max contribution from your employer, right? That's free money. But number two, it's also going to allow you to contribute pre-tax to where it's going to lower your tax liability. In simple numbers, you personally can contribute $23,000 to a 401k. So if you made $100,000, you can subtract that $23,000, and now your tax liability would be $77,000. And that's what you're paying taxes on, and it would lower you a bracket. So I know that's a very simplistic way to put it, but 401ks are fantastic. Now, to answer the question, is it enough? Well, probably not. There's other things you can do to contribute to your retirement. You can actually set up an IRA in addition. A lot of people have a 401k and an IRA or a Roth IRA, which we'll get to it in a little bit and why those are important. But it's an additional $7,000 that you can contribute to retirement. And a 401k is great to have. It's great to invest, and make sure that you are, if you have that ability, that you are investing that consistently. And there's actually a cool thing that we do here that I'd be happy to do for you guys. We do a paycheck analysis. And what this does is we'll look at your paycheck, we'll look at your taxes, how much is taken out, and we will show you if you are contributing X amount of dollars to your 401k every 2 weeks on your paycheck, how that would reduce your paycheck. What you will be surprised is your take home is not adjusted very much at all by being able to contribute. So that means that you're putting money in retirement, it's growing, and your take-home pay is staying pretty similar. So I can run that analysis for you. I'd be happy to do it.
All right, number 2. I've been paying extra on my mortgage to reduce the principal, but should I prioritize that or invest more in the stock market?
Ooh, that is a loaded question. So let's first look at the mortgage. Today, the rates are much higher than they've been in the last 8 years. Now, if historically we are still at very low rates, it was in the 20s back in the 90s, so we're at historically low rates. So if you're at a 6 or 7% mortgage, you might think it's high because your neighbor down the street refied back in 2020 and they got a 2.7, mortgage. But even at 7%, that's pretty cheap money, meaning that there are opportunities to earn more on that money. So if you were to, let's say your mortgage was $3,000 a month, and you're like, okay, I want to put another $500 into that mortgage to pay it down quicker. But your mortgage rate is 7%. But I can take that same 5% and look at the market and just look at the S&P 500 and what it's done and what it's trended at. Much higher, right? Higher than 10% actually over the last 10 years. Well, that means that my money, that $500 is going to grow, and it's actually going to give me more money down the line rather than putting that into my mortgage. So you really have to look at the balance of what the interest rate is. Now, if you're in a 2%, 3% mortgage rate, like I had mentioned before, you want to look at what you can do to invest that to grow, because that is extremely cheap money and it ain't going to get any cheaper. So I would recommend that you look at your personal situation, and if you're going to contribute extra, that you probably look into growing that money into the market. You can look at safe money, which we do safe money all the time. We do annuities. These are things that will grow based on an index, but also protects your principal. But again, generally is going to earn much more than what you're paying in your mortgage percentage.
With interest rates rising, is it still a good idea to finance a new car, or should I buy a used one with cash?
So this is a great question, because as we all know, a vehicle is a depreciating asset, period. But there's different scenarios when you look at this. If you want to buy a brand new car, well, why are you buying a brand new car? If your interest rate is, let's just say, I think 9% at this point in recording is right around 7 to 9% is right around where we're seeing rates on car loans, and it used to be 0%. That doesn't even exist anymore. So it's kind of a high interest to pay on a depreciating asset. So one thing you can do, rather than a brand new car, you can look at something that is 2 or 3 years older, that's got 30, 40,000 miles on it. Because what that's going to do is the main appreciation that happens is in that first 2 years, or I should say the most accelerated time. It's always going to be a depreciating asset, but the most accelerated time is going to be in that first 2 years. So if you can buy it at that 2-year mark, you are buying at a much less depreciated value, and the interest on that is going to be, even though it's the same, you're not going to pay it on a depreciating asset as much. Paying cash when it comes to cars can be a good idea if you have the cash. The challenge is you want to make sure that you leave enough cash for reserves in case something happens. So let's just say, for example, you have $100,000 saved up, and that $100,000 you just have for a rainy day. And now it's, oh, well, I need a new car. This one, the tires are worn out. I've ran this thing into the ground, and I want to buy a brand new car. Well, if you're going to pay cash for it, number one, I highly recommend you do not pay cash for a brand new one, going back to my previous point. But if you want to pay cash for that 2-year-old car, well, that can be fine as long as it doesn't leave you strapped in that money. Now, this is for somebody who doesn't own a business. If you own a business, there's going to be times where you buy a vehicle for reasons from a tax purpose. You're going to buy that vehicle in 1 year, and you're going to be able to take that entire depreciation off that vehicle in 1 year, so that it's going to lower your tax liability. So there are some caveats to this, but if you're somebody who has a W-2 job and you're working like that, I highly recommend that you buy a 2-year-old or more car that's in great shape. Certified pre-owned is a great way to do it. And that if you have cash, put it down. You don't have to finance the entire thing. But if it's going to put you in a position where you don't have any reserves anymore, I would probably finance a portion of it and then pay cash for the rest of it, so it's a quicker loan. Oh, lastly, your loan, 7-year loans, please do not do that. Do it as quick as possible. If you can do a 3-year, awesome. If you can do a 4-year, awesome. Anytime you get over that, although the payment is smaller, you're paying way more in interest than you need to be.
I've got a decent emergency fund saved up. Should I leave it in a savings account, or is there a smarter place to park my money?
So that's a good question. And generally, when it comes to an emergency fund, you are looking at, they always say 3 to 6 months, which is so funny because that's quite the disparity. Let's just say your emergency fund, 1 month of what your family needs to live is $10,000, right? So it's either $30,000 or $60,000. That's a pretty big gap. What I would recommend is 90 days, right? You can always add more, but 90 days is what you need in case something happens. So let's just take that as an example. You want to make sure that money's liquid, meaning that you don't have to go and jump through a whole bunch of hoops to get that in case something happens, in case your car breaks down and you need the reserves for that. Something happens and now you need to replace your roof or your AC at your home, or gosh dang, my child had a medical issue and I got to make sure I pay that deductible, and making sure that you have cash readily available. So that being said, you don't want to put that into stocks and bonds and these types of things that you're going to have to, if you've made money and appreciate, you're going to have to pay capital gains in some cases. And you're also going to have to sell that off and get the amount, the funds there. So what I recommend is that you look at what's called a high yield savings account. There's so many of them out there and the rates change consistently. Every credit card company has one. Yes, credit card companies actually do have some good things other than charging you 29%. They actually have some savings accounts that generally start at 4%, sometimes go a little higher. But there's a lot of banks out there that will give you 5%. And the highest I've seen, the one I have personally, is with Forbright, and that was 5.3%. But you can look, go to NerdWallet, just do a quick search on NerdWallet of what high yield savings accounts are there. And what's nice is let's say now you have that $30,000 just sitting there and you don't need the emergency fund. Well, 5% on that money is $1,500 you're earning on a yearly basis on annual income, right? So that's a great way to have it. And because it's in a savings account, it's liquid. If you need it, you can go take that money out and there's no penalties for that.
I've got some credit card debt that I'm paying down. Would it make sense to use some of my savings to pay it off faster?
So this is one of those questions where if you've got savings and yet you have a credit card debt, you absolutely want to pay that credit card off or down as much as possible. Why? Because let's just do simple math. Let's say your credit card, you have a $5,000 balance on it and you're at a 29% interest rate, so roughly 2.5% a month. That means that on that balance, you're going to pay 2.5%. You're getting 2.5% is literally going to the company every single month. So with that, it doesn't make sense if you can pay that off and not have any interest going there. And if you do have an emergency, well, you still have the credit card if you can put it on, but now you're not earning, that interest isn't just eating you away at 29%. So you obviously want to have an emergency fund, but if you've got a fund that can pay off your credit card and you can still build that fund up, man, you do not want to be in credit card debt. I will tell you, I've been in credit card debt different times in my life, and the best feeling of all time is when you really look at it. I think the worst we were in, personally, I don't know. I want to say it was like around $40,000. And so just think about that, right? $40,000 at 2.5%. That's $1,000 a month. $1,000 a month that these guys are making off of me. Well, that's $1,000 that you can flip in your favor. So when we paid all that off, and this is a long time ago, but we paid it all off, that's now $1,000 that I'm not paying to somebody else that I can use for whatever I want. So make sure that if you have savings, get rid of credit card debt. That should be number one goal. Use credit cards for smart things. Credit cards can be used correctly. And I know some people are like, I just don't trust myself. And if that's you, do not use them. However, if you can be disciplined enough and you can find a Chase Sapphire card or an American Express that makes sense, or with your bank, a lot of different banks have their own cards with rewards, you can get 1.5% or 2% on the money and you can pay it off monthly. Now you are using their money. They're banking that you will not pay it off. But I'm telling you, we pay ours off now every month and we get some incredible awards. We get to travel. We get free cash back. These types of things that are there that they have as incentives. So there is a good way to use credit cards, but do not get into credit card debt that is revolving.
How can I make the most of my tax refund each year? Should I invest it, save it, or use it to pay down debt?
So let's start with tax refund. What that means is that you've given the government more of your money before they actually need it, right? That's a tax refund. You've basically said, hey, government, here's my money. You take it. So you want to make sure that you are balancing that out as much as possible, because ideally you don't want a tax refund. They are not a savings account. They are not something that you should just give money to and then, oh, okay, well, they're going to give it back in April of or I should say in January when you file, or February. Tax refunds are not a bonus. Okay, so let's start with that. Let's make sure you're optimizing things to where you are not looking at it from that. Now that I've said that, to answer the question specifically, if you do get a tax refund every year, what I would recommend is, number one, any debt you have, credit card debt, get rid of. Okay, I've already said that. Number two, make sure you're maximizing your retirement accounts like we talked about. This can be a 401k that you have. This can be an IRA, a Roth IRA, a self-employment pension, which is a SEP IRA. You can maximize these, and you can actually do this in the year after in some cases and actually pay towards a previous year. So you want to make sure you pay off the credit card debt with that tax refund. You are saving in your retirement accounts. And then if you need a little for the rainy day, make sure you're putting it in your rainy day, that 3 months of income that you need. But chances are, if you're getting a tax refund every day, you're not declaring what you probably should with your work, and you're using it as a savings account. And if you come talk to me, I will make sure that we can make the adjustments that you need to where you're saving and you're not waiting every year for a tax refund, which is just the government giving you your money back.
We're considering opening a 529 plan for our child's college, but is it better to invest that, or are there other ways to save for their future?
So a 529 plan is a great way to save. And if for those of you who don't know what this is an education fund that you can invest in that also grows tax-free, that you can put in for your child that they can use when they become of age that go towards expenses for schooling. This can be college tuition. This can be room and board. This can be for books. This can be for all things education. And there's a whole list, a laundry list of this. Now, it is a great way to save money for it, but here's the caveat to that. Let's say, for example, you save that money and your child did not decide that they were going to go to college or a trade school. Well, if they go a different route, that money is going to be penalized. You're actually going to be penalized when they take it out for something that's not education-based. So you have to really know that that's the course for your child when you're saving it. It can be a great vehicle if you know that that's the course. If you're somebody that college is the only way, that's the way you grew up, that's the way my kids are, and you're stringent on that, probably a good way to go about it. However, there's some other ways that you can save that grow tax-free as well. So we have indexed universal life insurance policies. You might be thinking, a life insurance policy? How is that savings for my child? Well, I have them for all my children, and I have two for each one of my 3 children. And what it does is it allows you to, again, grow money tax-free. So there's a portion of that goes towards the death benefit. And I know, talking about death benefit in your child, like Nobody wants to think about that. That's really not the purpose of it, right? It is there. But what it does is part of that pays the insurance, part of it goes to cash value. There's also what's called the modified endowment contract, meaning this is money, extra money, additional money you can put in every year that you can put into that policy that grows tax-free. So when they become of age, let's just use simple math, and let's say you can put $500 a month into that, right? So now that money has grown, $500 a month, $6,000 a year. You've done that over 10 years, $60,000 that they have, and it's also accrued interest, so let's call it $85,000, $90,000 for just random numbers. I can run some real ones for you. That can be used. They can either, they can borrow against that money in a loan, which is great because that means they don't have to repay it, and they're borrowing at a percentage from that insurance company, but it's also indexed, so it's a wash loan. They're not actually paying any money for that. Or they can surrender that amount of money and just take the cash. Usually that's not the best case because they can still contribute to these things, but that money can be used for anything. To buy a house, a wedding, maybe a business they want to start. It can be used for all things, doesn't have to be exclusively for education alone. So both are excellent options, just depends on what you want, and you can do both if you want to make sure that you're maximizing it and you've got that extra cash to put in.
Is now a good time to invest in the stock market, given how much it's fluctuating, or should I wait for things to stabilize?
So that's a good question. This was actually asked me, I think it was in, I want to say it was in September, right? So this is before the election was over, and my answer would have been different there, and that was, actually my answer would have been exactly this. I wouldn't invest a ton right now. There's a lot of unknown. I would put it in super safe money if you can, because there is a lot of unknown. Now that the election's over, we're already seeing some huge bumps. The S&P has seen a bump. The actual, NASDAQ was, the Dow. I mean, these were at all-time highs right after the election. So that's a trend that things are going to grow pretty well. So you want to make sure that if you have the ability to put money into stocks, that you do right now. Now, it's a percentage of your income. You have to look at your budget, because in any sort of budgeting and retirement planning, you want to have a component of safe money, and then you want to have a little bit more aggressive. And that aggressive scale really depends on your age and how much money you have extra. If you're in a situation where you're in your mid-30s, your early 40s, and you've got pretty good discretionary income, and you have your savings set aside for that emergency fund, you have no credit card debt, you do have you're contributing to your 401k like you should and maximizing that, or your other retirement accounts if you're self-employed, then yes, the stock market is a very good place to put your money in the next 4 years. And I would actually, let me give you some examples. This was from Candy Valentino. Now, Candy Valentino, if you don't know who she is super smart, but I just found this yesterday, and let me pull up the post here. She's a financial advisor. She's written a couple of books. I recommend checking them out. And she said just this yesterday, if you're looking for some specific stocks. Now, I'm not telling you to go buy these. I'm putting that out there. It's just something to think about. But she said, want to make more money? Here are 4 sectors and stock picks post-Trump election. Now, the reason we have this is we have historical data. We've got 4 years to look at of when he was in office. But she said, financial stocks. So JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo. During the 2016 Trump presidency, these stocks were up 85%. Energy stocks, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil. During the 2016 Trump presidency, these stocks were up 10 to 20%. Personally, I've got quite a bit of stock of Valero because I believe that that's going to go up. Again, I'm not saying you should do it, it's just me personally. She says next, construction stocks. So these are Caterpillar, United Rentals, Vulcan, During the 2016 Trump presidency, these stocks were up 40 to 50%. We're going to see a lot of building going on in this country in the next several years. We're going to see a lot of regulations start to be muted down a little bit to where people can grow their businesses and they can get funding for building and growth of companies. So that's a good one. Defense stocks, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin. During the 2016 Trump presidency, these stocks were up 70 to 80%. So I share that with you because if you are looking to invest in the stock market and number one, you should talk to somebody who does this for a living and can help you with this. Someone like myself, someone, in this industry. But if you want to go at it your own and do your own research, which I highly recommend too, you have to use your own mind. Look at some of those sectors because, again, we actually have, for the first time in our history, not in history, but someone who's been elected twice in different times. Grover Cleveland was the other one. So we have historical data to say, oh, this is what happened last time. Well, there's a really good chance that this is what's going to happen this time. So use that knowledge, use that wisdom, and stocks are a good place to put your money.
I'm considering a side hustle to earn extra income, but are there tax implications or saving strategies I should know about?
Yeah, so if you're looking at a side hustle, let's just say you have a 9-to-5 job, you have a $75,000 a year salary, and you're like, man, I'm not making it like I want. I can't take as many vacations as I want. I can't provide everything I want for my kids, and I'm not saving as much. You're like, man, it's time to start a side hustle, and you've got a talent or a business idea. Number one, I recommend you go for it because this is the free enterprise system. We are in the United States of America, one of the countries that makes it fruitful for you to go out on your own and to do your own business. So that being said, if you want to start a side hustle, yes, you should do it. As far as benefits of it, there's a ton of benefits from it. From a standpoint of tax benefits, number one, there are write-offs that come with owning your own business that you can look into. I'm not going to list them all here, but this can be things like travel, vehicles, education. This can be things like materials. This can be inventory. This can be all types of different things now that you can utilize and you can use on your taxes to reduce your tax liability of what you owe as your $75,000 income over here in your job. So from a savings standpoint, you can also open up a different retirement account and you can start putting money towards that as your business gets going. Most of the time when you're starting a side hustle though, you're kind of reinvesting back into the business and it takes a while. And it takes longer than you think. Trust me, I owned a business for 15 years and I was fortunate. I was able to sell that in 2022. But in the first couple of years, and I've told this story before, man, I was down to my last $20 bill in the first couple of years because everything had been reinvested into it. All my time, energy, money was invested into the business. So that side hustle is not necessarily just going to produce money right away. If you're in that situation where that side hustle will produce, let's say somebody wants to hire you for your talent and now they're just going to 1099 you and you can make money like that, awesome. Get whatever equipment you need and then just start stacking cash. Save that money, put it into retirement and future, put it into stocks. So there are some benefits from a tax liability standpoint in write-offs. There's also a benefit to when you have that income investing into more retirement. So there's offsetting things when it comes to that.
I'm getting closer to retirement, but I'm worried about healthcare costs. Should I be doing something now to cover these costs in the future?
So I'm going to first off say that I'm not a healthcare expert, right? So I'm not going to walk you through the different plans that are available from an insurance standpoint. What I will say though, from a retirement standpoint side of things, you have what's called health savings accounts. Health savings accounts are a great way to put money that can grow, by the way, that grows in a similar way to an index fund to where if you put $1,000 in, and it ends, let's just say it earns 10% income over a year, now you've got $1,100. And so on and so forth. And you can grow that to a very large level. So if you're getting closer to retirement, I would highly recommend looking at a health savings account, because that money can be used towards any medical expenses. This can be in addition to your actual insurance that you have from a health insurance standpoint. So this can cover copays, this can cover any deductibles, this can cover blood work, it can cover a variety of different things. So a health savings account is a great way to, again, utilize the tax system and utilize a savings account specifically set up to put money in that bucket for yourself.
That's it.
All right. Well, hey guys, I hope you got something out of this. And again, I would love to hear your feedback. You know, if there are further questions you would like to ask based on what we talked about and go a little deeper, if there's other questions, we're going to do this type of thing more often. And I look forward to it. I hope this was valuable to you. If there's some specific things you think other people can get some value out of, please share it out. And, you know, with that, I appreciate you. Love you guys. We'll see you soon.
Let's do it one more time. You cut out a couple of times with the body pack.
Okay.
We just lost your signal, so let's make it a little more visible.
Do the whole thing again?
Just that outro.
Oh, gotcha. Oh.
Yeah, let's start the interview from the beginning.
I'm like, damn, Hank. All right. Can you hear me good now? Awesome. Well, I appreciate you guys tuning into this, checking it out, and hearing my perspective. Now, I'm not saying I'm 100% right. This is what I believe, though. And I want you to think about this for yourself, some of these answers. If you want to have further dialogue on it or have questions deeper, please reach out to me. DM me on social media, email me, jnorris@arrivefinancialservices.com. Call me, 480-612-5607. We can have conversations about it, and I'd love to help you any way I can. If you think that this was of value to yourself, please share this out with a friend. Let them hear from my perspective some things that I've seen through the time that I've been in business and the times that I've been able to help people grow their financial success. So I appreciate you guys tuning in. We love you. We'll see you next time.
Beautiful.
All right.